just beginning. And that's what this weekend is about. Because in 2012, we're going to add to the majority in the House. We're going to see a conservative majority in the U.S. Senate, and we're going to replace Barack Obama with a president that we can be proud of. You know, Ronald Reagan once said that the closest thing to eternal life on this earth was a federal program. Once enacted, it's kind of hard to get rid of. But we're going to change that, because after that new Congress is sworn in on January 5th, 2013, after we've already defunded it, after we've already sued it in the courts, after we've already restricted it and constrained it, we're going to pass a bill repealing Obamacare, and it's going to be signed into law by a new president.
So where do we find ourselves today? Our American cause is threatened, and once again must be defended. As we face these incredible economic times, if we would return to our basic principles of free market and free enterprise, we would truly begin a recovery. However, the ideological chasm we currently face has us believing that a bigger government, a growing public sector, larger debt because of government spending are the solutions. We have forgotten that it is the American individual, their investment, their ingenuity, their innovation, which will set us towards a brighter day. We must set the conditions for them to grow our economy and abandon the belief that nationalizing our production is the answer. We must set the conditions for small businesses, corporations and businesses, our private sector growth. And that means reforming our tax policies and economic policies to inspire long-term, sustainable economic growth. See, the American cause is grounded in unleashing the indomitable American entrepreneurial spirit.
Here's what it all comes down to. The way in which we address this debt crisis, how we handle this going in, will determine what kind of country we are coming out of it. And so let's just know that we are in this moment in America. It's a very precarious moment in America. I see it as a great opportunity in America. And it's a moment where we can decide, do we believe in those founding principles that made us so great, or are we going to put those aside and go with a different plan, a social democracy, European kind of a system? What's so unique about America is not just a country. It's not just a landmass. It's not Maine to California, Wisconsin to Florida. It's an idea. And the idea of America is that our rights come from God and nature. They come before government. It's the only country founded as such. And so our rights are not given to us from government. Our rights are ours naturally, given to us by God. And so knowing this, applying these principles, liberty, freedom, self-determination, government by consent of the governed, applying those principles to the problems of the today renews America.
I couldn't resist. As we meet here today, I don't pretend to know how the critical moral issues of our time will ultimately play out. We see through a glass darkly in this life, and the way ahead is full of perils, seen and unseen. But even if we cannot predict where our nation is headed, we know as conservatives where we must stand. And today we must cut, we must cap, we must balance and bury. Cut the budget, cap government spending, pass a balanced budget amendment, and bury Obamacare.
But marriage is extremely important. Children are extremely important and to be highly valued. And that's one thing that I think in our society we have done fairly well, is place a high value on children. We need to do that for the benefit of the next generation. And I think that's why the issue of life is so profound and so dear. When my husband and I met in college, we were 19 years of age. We had seen a film series, perhaps some of you saw it. It was called How Shall We Then Live? It was by Dr. Francis Schaeffer. And he said in that film series that abortion was the watershed issue of our time. And my husband and I heard that, and it was a profound thought for both of us, the importance of that issue and the high value that we need to place on human rights and on human life. The founders did in the Declaration of Independence. They wrote in the Declaration, Thomas Jefferson penned the words, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among those rights are life. That's the first right. And the incredible thing about this statement is that the inalienable rights are ones that man cannot give. He's incapable of giving them. Government is incapable of giving inalienable rights. Only a creator can. In the wisdom of the founders, they recognized this natural law, this truth that was self-evident to all people, that only God could give life.
You know, I'm from Mississippi, and one of our great Mississippians, a fellow named Fred Smith. Fred Smith is the founder and the CEO of FedEx. Fred has a great expression. Fred says, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And in political campaigns, in great crusades, in the effort to get our country back on the right track, we got to stay focused on the main thing. The main thing is winning the election. We can't change the country like we want it unless we win the election. Okay? Remember, purity in politics, purity is the enemy of victory. Okay? We can't start out with the idea as the Faith and Freedom Coalition that our candidate's got to agree with me on every single thing. We cannot expect our candidate to be pure. Winning is about unity. Winning is about us sticking together to achieve the main thing.
Defend our treasury and defend our values. Since the first of this year, we've gotten a foretaste of what a true Republican Congress, a House and a Senate, could be. Republicans hit Capitol Hill. We voted to cut spending now. We voted to end the borrowing and the bailouts of the recent past. And House Republicans voted to repeal Obamacare, lock, stock, and barrel. But we need a Senate and a White House to finish the job. So step one of the process today is we have to elect a Republican majority in the United States Senate. We have to re-elect this courageous new principled majority in the House of Representatives. And I got to tell you, men and women, just as a rank-and-file Republican, it is absolutely essential that the Republican Party nominate a candidate who will stand for common-sense conservative values without apology. That is the best prescription for victory on the national level in 2012.
What did we say we were going to do? Focus on jobs. Jobs is the #1 issue in our country. People want the economy moving again, and they want jobs. All of the spending spree that Congress, the Democrat Congress, and the President have been on the last 2 years have done nothing to create jobs. We've wasted $2 trillion, and what have we gotten for it? We've lost 2.7 million jobs since he took office. And we've got to get spending under control because it'll help rebuild confidence in our country. One of the first actions we took was to keep our promise to repeal Obamacare. And every Republican in the United States House of Representatives voted to repeal this monstrosity that will ruin the best health care delivery system in the world and will bankrupt our country. And we're going to continue to do everything we can to make sure that this law never, ever gets implemented. And whether it's defunding it, whether it's crippling it, I really do believe that this is bad for America and it has to be stopped.
And now we face new obstacles as our country finds itself at a crossroads. And before us is a choice. Believe me, it's a choice of who we want to be as a country. Do we want a future with more taxes and more government? No, you're right. Or do we want to see more growth and more jobs? We saw the former when Democrat-controlled Washington enacted the nearly trillion-dollar stimulus program, which drove up our debt and failed to get people back to work. And it took a sweeping Republican electoral victory to stop President Obama, to stop Harry Reid, and to stop Nancy Pelosi from imposing one of the largest increases in taxes in American history.
And my friends, what needs to happen is we as Americans need to get back in control of our own destiny. We are vulnerable to others because of the high levels of dangerous debt and because of our counterproductive energy policies. I truly believe that the elections in 2012 will be pivotal in determining the trajectory of our country. Whether people are going to have that opportunity to achieve the American dream continue to decline, or we begin ascending again. Friends, it is time for an American comeback. And it is a comeback that's based on foundational principles and an agenda that has the principles of freedom, of opportunity for all, and personal responsibility at its core, as opposed to what we're seeing, which is dictates, mandates, redistribution, and initiative sapping dependency on government. There is an urgency for action. We can't dawdle anymore. First, what we need to do, team, we need to rein in this overreaching, overspending federal government. We need to be trusting the people in the states. The 10th Amendment still exists. And I trust the people in the states rather than... Good. We trust the people in the states rather than these sanctimonious social engineers and liberals in Washington and their judges who invent the law and ignore us, we the people.
Nobody is protected like Barack Hussein Obama. Nobody. Nobody. I have never seen press that is so protective of a human being before. And, you know, I was thinking, he was over in England, and he made a horrendous toast at a very inappropriate time. And then he signed the ledger, or the registrar, as they would call it, May of 2008. So he was off 3 years. And I was saying to myself, I wonder what would have happened if George Bush signed it May of 2008. I wonder what would have happened if almost anybody was 3 years off. And the next day I watched the news, and they're saying, isn't that cute? Isn't that wonderful? Oh, that was so funny when he signed it. That, oh, he's so smart. It was so funny. And this is a problem. We have a man who is being very, very much protected by the press. And it's going to be very difficult. But I'll tell you something about beating President Obama.
So nobody will make loans, nobody will create jobs, nobody will expand their factories, nobody will expand health care, and you wonder why we don't have any economic growth in the United States. And it is all because of the policies of one man. But that which the hand of man has done, the hand of man can undo. And that's what we're going to do in 2012. Undo it. Free our economy. Get rid of these constraints. We're going to send a message to manufacturing. Go ahead and exploit the world market like you always have. We're not going to tax your carbon. We'll tell the banks, go ahead and make loans, take risks. We're not going to close you down. You small banks didn't cause this crisis. We're not going to penalize you for it. Medical industry, you're free. You can now grow and be the world's resource. And consumers, we're not going to raise your taxes. And then you will be amazed at what happens.
Second thought, Ralph Reed has put together a powerful and important Faith and Freedom Convention this weekend. I think we should also appreciate some of those who helped him do it.
Harry Reid, Nancy Pelosi, and our nation's premier community organizer, Barack Obama. He has organized a lot of us in the Tea Party to the Faith and Freedom Conference and Convention. He's brought us together because what he and Pelosi and Reid have threatened to do to turn our country into some cross between France and Greece, when we would prefer to return to the United States of America. But these three have motivated our team. And there are two teams in American politics. Our team, we want one thing from our central government, just to be left alone.
So, you know, as I go around and I speak with folks that are social conservatives, self-identified social conservatives, I hear all the time them talk about fiscal responsibility, about a government limited by the Constitution, and about a country based on capitalism and free market principles. Are we all in agreement on those things?
Right, right.
It's also impossible to go anywhere in the Tea Party movement and not hear about a country based on Judeo-Christian values. That's the history of the country. That's the reality of this country. So when people ask me, what do the Tea Party movement and what do the social conservative movement have in common? Well, you can see we have quite a bit in common, don't we?
God is for life. But God's not only for life, but God is for the sanctity of marriage. The sanctity of marriage. The Bible is very clear that, therefore shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Ladies and gentlemen, I could care less what your political affiliation is. God has defined marriage, and marriage is to be between one man and one woman. We've got a definition of what marriage ought to be. If we get on God's side, we're on the side of life. If we get on God's side, we're on the side of marriage.
For a moment. I recognize you're political activists. I recognize I'm not in church. I recognize most of you are not pastors, if any of you. But just dream with me for a moment. Dream with me for a moment. What would happen if 10% of America's pastors would stand up and boldly declare the truth on these issues? What would happen in our nation? We have 350,000 churches. Many pastors are bold. You just heard a very bold one, Benny Tate, who was here a moment ago. We need thousands more like him. We need 100,000 like him. Why are they silent? Why are some silent? Frank Wright of the National Religion Organization said recently in a conference that many pastors are self-censoring. Not only are people leaning on them, don't talk about politics when it's really a biblical issue. What happens when Caesar demands that which is God's? That's what's happened here. These aren't merely political issues, like the reporter said to me from a major station here in town yesterday. Why would you dare speak out on political issues? I'm speaking out, sir, on biblical issues that have political ramifications. And I should when babies are being killed in the womb.
But beyond what his promises are that have been broken, we've got other challenges that we're going to have to clean up and the mess we're going to have to fix. This is a nation that faces $4 a gallon gasoline. We've got crushing levels of unemployment that's hurting our fellow citizens and families all across this country. We've got a federal government that is out of control, and we have a president who offers us more fluffy rhetoric. President Obama's fluffy rhetoric doesn't fill our gas tanks with gas, and it doesn't pay our mortgages, and it doesn't pay for our children's needs and clothes and things that they might need, and it doesn't pay the mortgage. And I think you could join me, can't you, in tell President Obama, we've had enough of your broken promises. We've had enough of your fluffy rhetoric. Lead the country or get out of the way.
On the immigration issue, Arizona's trying to defend its citizens. Let me tell you something. I am in favor of legal immigration. My goodness, I would not be standing here today. But my grandfather came through Ellis Island. He waited in line. He learned to speak English, which, by the way, was the language spoke in my grandfather's house. He learned it. He wasn't speaking Russian in those days. He understood what leaving Russia meant. Freedom. That Statue of Liberty I've got in my office. We have great offices in Washington, D.C., right next to the Supreme Court. My wife and boys gave me a present a couple years ago. It's a model of Ellis Island. So do I love immigration? Yes, legal immigration. That's why we are the great country we are. But my goodness, let the state of Arizona defend its citizens from a border war. All right. We need change. We need change we can really believe in. That's going to start with regaining the Senate and getting the right president of the United States. Together we can make that difference. We can undo Obamacare, let our states defend their citizens, protect the unborn, be faithful to the Constitution, protect our ally in the Middle East, and not be embarrassed to say, we are Americans, we're proud of our heritage, and we're going to stand for liberty and freedom and the Constitution and the rule of law. So help us, God.
And with this crisis going on, the president is in the Midwest today, taking a victory lap about how successful he's been in dealing in the automobile industry. And so he's taking a victory lap at the very time we have more people announced today that are out of work. It's an extraordinary thing. I don't think it's possible to solve a crisis if you can't see a crisis. And this president does not see a crisis, and we do. I also think it's a moral tragedy for us to pile up more and more debt that we know we can't possibly pay off during our lifetimes and pushing that onto the next generation. I think it's totally inexcusable. I want to make sure that we as a generation and generations in this room pass along a torch to the next generation rather than passing on a bill for our excesses. And we're going to do that. Now, I sometimes wonder how it is that the president has been so wrong in his guidance of the economy and the nation. And I'm reminded of what Ronald Reagan said. He said, it's not that liberals are ignorant, it's just that what they know is wrong. And he's proven that, hasn't he?
What we have done today, I don't think we need a king, and we don't need Washington to act as if they're the king in this country. But today there is so much dependency on the government, and it's cradle to grave, and we have so little confidence in ourselves. We believe that if we don't have the safety net, and we don't have the government there, if we don't have medical care taken care of, if we don't have the government schools, everything would fall apart. We have, as a people, lost our confidence and understanding of what true liberty is all about and where it comes from. And it doesn't come from our king. It doesn't come from our government. Our liberties come from our Creator. That's where our life and liberty comes from. But it was advised by the founders at the time that the Constitution would not work if we did not remain a moral society. And we're at the crossroads right now because we have lived beyond our means. We have become totally dependent. We do all the things that we shouldn't do and don't do the things we should do.
It's time to prepare a new generation of faith-based individuals, teachers for our schools to take back the American education system. It's time to take back school boards, higher education boards, accreditation boards, and it's time to take back the Department of Education with a William Bennett in this day. When I became president of Ohio Christian University, I pledged to lead this cause because I believe we are in a fight for the soul of America, and I want to win this fight. We may not need the sons and daughters of the American Revolution to bring about this change, but as one of my heroes, Patrick Henry, stood before his generation, I stand before you today as one of our country's Christian education leaders, absolutely committed to working with the Faith and Freedom Coalition to bring about a revolution in education. Therefore, I unequivocally proclaim, give us liberty in education or give us death.
I want a president and I want a congressional leader who sends a strong clarion call that you cannot have national security while you also handle bankruptcy. You can't do that. I hope that they listen and hear Joint Chiefs of Staff Mike Mullen, who says the greatest danger in our national security is our national debt. And in national security, I am looking for a president and congressional leaders who understand who our friends are, who our enemies are, and treat them accordingly. And who understand that good fences make good neighbors, and the place to start is our own borders. And rather than suing the states that are trying to fulfill the standing law of the land, congratulate and award the states who do that.
An exceptional nation. We're an exceptional nation. You know it. I know it. President Obama might not know it. But we're going to elect a president in his place that knows it. But we also know that while we are an exceptional nation, we are not exempt from limits. Moral limits, debt limits, limits that basically are imposed by a moral discipline of folks who understand that you can't run faith and God out of the public square and not destroy the very basis upon which our exceptionalism is based.
The American public were looking for a president in a very difficult time in our country's history as a result of economic recessions and troubles overseas. So they looked for someone in a president that they could believe in. And they found Barack Obama. And he took that belief in him and centralized power in him and those around him. I believe as I cross America, I believe at my core that as I go across America, Americans have now realized that what they need is not someone that they can believe in, but they need a president who believes in them.
Also believe that we must bless America because I'm an American and I love America and I want God to bless America, and God blesses us when we obey him, and he doesn't bless us when we disobey him. And he has made it very clear that Israel has an ally far more powerful than the United States of America. He's called the Lion of Judah. Now, we can say many things about President Obama, but one thing you can't say about him is that he's stupid. He's not stupid. He's a very bright man. He's a very foolish man, but he's a very bright man. And he knows what he's doing, and he knows what he says, and he is the most, if Ariel Sharon said that George W. Bush was the best president of Israel, the best president of the United States that Israel has ever had. If that's true, the worst president of the United States that Israel has ever had is Barack Obama. There is no question that he is pro-Palestinian, and his policies are pro-Palestinian. Well, I have a word of encouragement for our friends in Israel who must be feeling a little abandoned and a little abused and a little used right now. My dear friends, help is on the way.
Whoever wins the Republican nomination can beat Barack Obama. And the fun part for me, as you know, at the Daily Caller, is anybody can win the Republican nomination at this point, meaning we could have, as I said, a President Mitt Romney, a President Sarah Palin, a President Herman Cain, go down the list. And let's just take Sarah Palin as a prime example. I mean, we don't even know if she's running or not, but I think it's entirely plausible. It's not, at least it's not absurd to think that Sarah Palin could win Iowa, win South Carolina, build a juggernaut, and actually win the nomination. I mean, it's entirely possible. I could see Mitt Romney also winning New Hampshire and catching momentum. But it's entirely wide open, so I think it's fine.
And this morning, I tell you, our president needs to hear that message too. When Standard & Poor's says that our nation is potentially going to be downgraded in its credit rating, and Moody's rates Wisconsin's budget credit positive, you know we need a national realignment. We have $14 trillion in debt in our national government, and our president is too partisan to acknowledge the fact that people like Paul Ryan and Scott Walker are right. The time for frugality and moderation is now. The time for adult leadership is now. The time to grow jobs is now. And that is exactly what we are doing in the great state of Wisconsin. In fact, we are aggressively pursuing entrepreneurs and innovators to come and join us in an administration that actually wants to invest in the success of job creators, because during our campaign, Governor Walker and I pledged to help the private sector create 250,000 new jobs, because we know it is the private sector that creates the jobs in this country.
The new health care law provides the prime example of this, and it is historic in that 28 states now are party plaintiffs suing their own federal government for violating the Constitution. That has never happened before. Has never happened before. Virginia was the first state to argue in court that the individual mandate was unconstitutional. We did that last October. We've argued the federal government's attempt to use the Constitution's Commerce Clause to order people, to dictate to people, that they buy private health insurance, Nancy-approved health insurance. She has the best title in Washington, former speaker. I really like that one.
We have to stand very proud and to say to President Obama, no, we cannot. No, we can't. We cannot put our children in risk. We cannot put our friends. How many of you have been to Israel? Can you raise your hands? I'm sure all of you, every night when you pray, you are also in Israel. And when you come to Israel and you want to land at our Ben Gurion airport, in order to land, the airplane must make a U-turn in order to land. And if, God forbid, there will be a Palestinian state, we will have to make the U-turn above a terrorist state. Imagine what will happen if there will be one terrorist with one missile, what it will cause to our economy, to our liberty. And I'm telling here, very straight, with all due respect, to President Obama. President Obama, take your hands from Jerusalem.
We have over 1.2 million abortions in our nation every year. I know that there are many issues that we face as Americans, many of us as conservatives, as those that care about faith and freedom. But as Mother Teresa says, the greatest destroyer of peace, the peace that we all hunger for, right? The peace that we all want. The greatest destroyer of peace in the world today is the cry of the innocent, unborn child. She's reminding us that we cannot have peace and we cannot have freedom in America, in the world, in our families, in our own lives, if we tolerate the shedding of the most innocent blood among us. And so I would urge us all to remember and firmly stand together to say enough is enough. That as we stand for faith and freedom in our country and to protect these liberties, we'll also stand for the right to life of the most innocent among us. That this is the paramount issue, that this is not just another issue, but that this is the issue that we must all heed, because our nation will not survive if we tolerate the shedding of innocent blood in our great country.
We're going to investigate the media itself. And I thank Breitbart for instilling in me a passion for investigating the media itself. They try to stop me. If you Google me and read about me, you'll read all types of stuff. And they've definitely charged me with a crime I didn't commit. They've prosecuted me. They've sued me. They've used the law to hurt me. They charged me with a misdemeanor. Posing as something I'm not inside of a politician's office. I thought the Supreme Court said equal justice under law. Couldn't we prosecute all the people in D.C. with that crime? I mean...
And the pursuit of happiness. The founding fathers didn't say anything about a guarantee or a department of happy. They said the pursuit of happiness based upon each individual's own aspiration, motivation, and determination, like my parents. When my dad walked off of that small farm at the age of 18, he didn't have but one kind of equity, and that was sweat equity in order to achieve his American dream. That's why, in order for us to address these crises, we've got to make a few changes in the attitude of the American people. We've got to get away from being an entitlement society to an empowerment society.